A few months ago, you left the BBC and returned to the sunshine of Uganda.
Absolutely.
This after close to 13 years? When you think about the BBC, you think about the BBC. It's one of those brand names. It's Apple. It's Facebook. It's the BBC. It's the CNN. What was that like?
First of all, you go into the BBC, you realize very quickly that even if you've been a big fish in your sea, in your pond, here you're going to be a big fish in an ocean. The amount of talent you find is incredible. People with a serious, deep knowledge of their craft. People who've been there, done that, seen it all. People who've met presidents, prime ministers, who've lived in countries you've never heard of. So their grasp of issues is quite daunting if you've just come from Kampala and all you know are these streets.
This is the very, very best. I introduce the very, very next. Big deal, you know this is the big league. Unsanga mumihanda ya Kigali make a big fish. Word on the street turakaze. Habari gani mumeze mute. Yutse nshimi mana kuva hunda mukiye. If you want the long form, come close murabure. Wait, what?
The long form.
What did he say?
The long form.
What?
The long form.
The long form. Hello there. My guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Alan Kasujja, one of Africa's most accomplished journalists. For over a decade at the BBC, Alan has shaped how the world understood Africa, hosting Newsday and Focus on Africa. Now back home, after 13 years abroad, he's reflecting on media, power, truth, and the country that made him. In this conversation, we talk about his journey from Kampala to London and back, the evolution of African storytelling, and the lessons he's learned about leadership, loss, and life in the spotlight. Hey everyone, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you who've been a part of the long form journey. Every view, comment, and subscription has helped us grow and get to where we are today. But here's the thing, about 72% of the people who actually watch this podcast haven't subscribed yet. We want to keep bringing you even bigger conversations with even bigger guests, including, let's say, even the president of this country. But this milestone starts with you. Subscribing is free, but it makes a huge difference. It shows our guests that what we're building here matters and that it's worth their time appearing on my platform. So please help us and hit that subscribe button, and we'll promise to keep delivering powerful, meaningful conversations. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into the episode. Alan.
Hey.
Welcome to the Long Form podcast, my friend.
Thank you.
It's an Alan with one L.
It's going to be one L. You've got to spell it right.
A few months ago, you left the BBC and returned to the sunshine of Uganda.
Absolutely.
This after close to 13 years at the BBC, at the Beeb. What were those years like, and were they as glamorous as, because when you think about the BBC, you think about the BBC. It's almost, it's greater than, it's one of those brand names. It's Apple, it's Facebook, it's the BBC, it's the CNN. What was that like?
First of all, you go into the BBC, you realize very quickly that even if you've been a big fish in your sea, in your pond, here you're going to be a big fish in an ocean. The amount of talent you find is incredible. People with a serious, deep knowledge of their craft. People who've been there, done that, seen it all. People who've met presidents, prime ministers, who've lived in countries you've never heard of. So their grasp of issues is quite daunting if you've just come from Kampala and all you know are these streets. But then again, it also offers you an opportunity to learn.
Mm.
And it's up to you to make that opportunity work for you. There's constant training, the opportunities to travel. You get to see things. But also you say to yourself, okay, this guy is brilliant. He's got a PhD in modern Asian politics. But he doesn't know what Kampala really is like. He's never been there. He's never been to Kigali. He's never lived the way I have.
He's never fetched water.
He's never. So I have that advantage. He doesn't speak the languages I speak. How do I then use that to my advantage? And I think that was what I worked in. And I remember one of my first episodes of Newsday, which is what I was recruited to present. I sat next to a guy who'd been doing this show for God knows how long. And before him, his father had been a journalist at the BBC. And you're like, my goodness.
And you're in your young 30s.
Yeah, and you have to decide whether you're going to swim or to sink. But going through the schools I went through, going through Kampala, sinking is never an option. You tap into that
I'm going
character.
to make it that courage.
Yeah. That these guys have it easy. Well, I have all these studios at my disposal that I can actually instruct. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to turn myself into a force. And so you come from that point of knowing nothing and not knowing how the system works to learning the system and figuring out how to make it work for you. So for those who know me, I say the BBC was working for me. I wasn't necessarily working for it. And it had to meet certain standards. It had KPIs to meet. And when it stopped meeting those KPIs, it was time for us to part ways.
Someone could, I was about to ask you, very few, you're at the top of the game, right? It's like playing for Real Madrid.
Arsenal.
Visit Rwanda.
Arsenal. Yeah.
Very few people want to leave, especially when you're at the top of your powers, right? You're 47 now?
No, I'm older than that. I'm not discussing my age. Forget that. You have to kill my marketability. Forget that.
But you're at the top of your powers, and you're comfortable.
But how do you know you're at top of your powers?
Because you're the biggest.
That in itself.
You're a big fish in an ocean, but you're still a blue whale.
Yeah, but you're still learning. You see, if you get comfortable, you're in trouble. I think for me it was important to reset. So I've done all this stuff. I've fought all these wars, pushed the African narrative, made sure that important questions are asked, made sure that African countries are seen, are given a fair shake. Fought battles that I will never discuss.
Let's discuss them.
No,
because we know when one of the things that when you think about the BBC, when I think about the BBC, so I'm a media person, I studied media. We understand as people from the global south, that very often organizations like those have certain agendas. They have a certain global viewpoint. And I never really have evidence of that because I'm not inside. I'm not part of the editorial board. I'm not sitting down and hearing those internal conversations. I just see what is produced. And very often I feel that, Africa, Rwanda, Uganda, Africans don't get a fair shake. Now you're telling me that you were fighting battles.
I think. So what's the question?
I
just think that first of all, nobody will pick up the phone and call me and say, Alan, I want you to take this line or to toe this line. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody, not even the Director General of the BBC will do that. They'll never do that. But you must understand how the world works. If I don't like you, if I don't like Paul Kagame, for example, if I don't like, you've got to edit that, I can't call him Paul Kagame. If I don't like President Kagame, for example, I will find people, like-minded people, and we shall mobilize and make sure that we are visible to the BBC, Now the BBC will so a BBC editor making a decision will have that to ride on. I don't know if that's clear. I think what ends up happening with a lot of you're Sunny, you're based in Rwanda. Tell me about Equatorial Guinea.
I know nothing.
Okay, now let's go to Kazakhstan. What can you tell me?
Absolutely nothing.
Azerbaijan?
Nothing.
But you have to fill in a running order.
Yeah.
And that running order has to have Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Equatorial Guinea on it. So
I'll just make some. Who can I find?
Exactement. And who do you find? Who is visible?
Yeah.
Who is willing to
move the needle as
exactly.
well? Someone
who's prepared, because if you're prepared, you jump on it. And then it becomes a case of saying that a narrative is being woven. But what is also true is African countries are not necessarily doing enough to placate themselves. The struggle right now, as we see it in the world, from where I sit, is a narrative struggle. African countries are not telling their stories sufficiently. What you need in African countries is a critical mass of young people who know their realities, doing the sort of stuff you're doing now, talking about those realities.
Before we continue, as you're probably aware, every conversation we bring takes time, research, and sometimes plane tickets. We do it because we love sharing stories that matter. If you've enjoyed what we've built and want to help us grow even further, you can now support the Longform directly. Feel free to donate to our Momo code 95462, registered under LF Media Limited. Every contribution, big or small, helps us go even further. Thank you. But I think that sometimes, even though we do that, we're still ignored.
Who's supposed to? Why should you be seen? That sounds like entitlement.
So we create the content, right? But I've created content for the last 3 years. The BBC over the last 3 years has done countless stories about Rwanda.
You can't match it to the BBC because that's a whole animal.
What I'm saying is,
itself, yes.
I've created content. So if someone does want to have a different a view on what is happening in Rwanda,
they'll come to you.
They can if they wish to.
Yeah.
Because I am available. I am online.
Yeah. And very often, because editorially you're required to cover your backside, someone will be like, okay, I found a guy called Sunny who seems to be pro-government. Why don't we get him on? And a good editor, a good journalist will make sure that you get as much coverage as the other guy who doesn't necessarily align with your thinking. But again, who is available? Who is there? Very often you pick up the phone and call and very often people are not willing to come on and speak.
You're the BBC. Come on.
No, you see, that is exactly the problem. Where is the BBC based?
No, the BBC is in London. We're sitting right here in Kampala.
Exactly. You're in Kampala, but you know what's happening in Gulu?
No.
I'm in Kigali. Do I know what's happening in Cyangugu?
Probably not.
Unless someone from Cyangugu stands up and tells me what's going on there and speaks authoritatively.
But I guess what happens very often is that they get someone, the BBC calls someone who is, say, a Michaela Wrong, who's written a book about Rwanda or the president and his former colleagues. And they will have her talk about politics. They'll have her talk about Visit Rwanda. They'll have her talk about Congo. They'll have her talk about Mozambique. She's not in any of those places.
And she shouldn't be talking about those things.
But then she does.
If for nothing else, and because, again, the way the world is organized is very complicated. She obviously has a book to sell, and she will do whatever she needs to sell that.
And we understand that.
But what is also true, and this is my mission for the rest of my life, is to make sure that there is a critical mass of Africans who are speaking up for this continent. It is who's available. Who has written books recently? Which Rwandan author has written anything recently?
Listen.
Who has countered that with a book of their own?
Mm.
You know what I mean? The amount of time and effort that goes into storytelling on these issues is incredible. But what you find is that there's barely any African visible. And I think we need to go back, and this has been something that I've been trying to do for a very long time. We need to go back to that place where we own our stories and we tell them ourselves. Because, like people have famously said, we are who we have been waiting for.
Mm.
Nobody's coming to save us. And until we get to that point, until you are able to do what you're doing now comfortably and able to look after your boys, your family, you know, this will be a gig that you do as a side thing and you do not necessarily focus on because, again, your existential realities take you away from that.
Yeah.
So I guess the point I'm trying to land is as simple as, for as long as our agency as Africans isn't triggered, for as long as we don't tell our own stories, we are in trouble. And that's what I did with Africa Daily. When we set it up, and my producers and I had many uncomfortable conversations, but they understood it in the end. We were very clear.
Why uncomfortable?
Uncomfortable because I took a position on it.
What was your position?
My position was I don't want to hear anybody who's non-African talking about African issues. I don't want to hear it.
And that was a problem?
No, it wasn't necessarily a problem, but sometimes, but this guy has lived in... No, don't tell me they've lived there. And there are people who live there now. But this guy is a doctor from the World Health... No. Is there a doctor who's actually doing the work there? I want to talk to that doctor who's doing the work. Oh, this guy... But, no. Have we exhausted the people who have actually lived the story?
Local expertise.
Exactly. And I think even just African intelligentsia, for example. Now, on issues like conservation, there's a guy in Kenya who I spoke to because I had serious questions about what conservation looks like now. You know, what is this thing called conservation where these people, white people, come to Africa and they're given huge chunks of land? What is going on there?
To save the animals.
Exactly, to save animals that we've coexisted with for thousands of years. Explain it to me like I'm an idiot. And when you get into those conversations, you realize very quickly that it's not usually a case of conservation. And then when you do a little bit of investigation, you realize there's more to it. Are you telling me that there are white people somewhere who give a bigger, use whatever expletive you want, about animals in Africa than I do? No, absolutely not. So you look into these issues, you explore them, and then you wonder, for example, this guy has been coming after President Kagame for a very long time. Who is he? Why does he have this thing for President Kagame? You explore that, you look into it, and then you discover that, oh, okay, so that is the angle. How do we counter that? Not necessarily, because you see, if you do not take time to understand those issues, it becomes very difficult for you to react. But what is also true is if you do not have your own content that speaks authoritatively on your own issues, these problems are going to continue.
And the BBC cannot speak on your behalf. Even though
Why would it speak on your behalf?
Even though Alan is trying his very best to speak on behalf of the African continent and tell the African story.
Absolutely. And there are so many incredible Africans at the BBC doing incredible work, interrogating everything, question everything. But what is also true, these stories must originate from here. It must be a case of saying that we as Africans must look into our realities and counter these narratives that are beginning to be normalized. You know, people are beginning to accept them as the gospel truth, yet it's a whole pile of bullcrap. You know, it's rubbish. I know this story better, so let me tell it better.
What would you say was the most memorable story you ever covered, and how did that story change the way you saw yourself as an African and as a man?
Hey, I've covered so many stories, man.
What's the one that you think on your deathbed? You'll think
There's
was
so
important.
many. There's so many stories. Thousands. But I'll tell you, I was, this is again. I'll tell you because you're Rwandan and you might be able to. I could pick up 1,000 stories, but let me tell you of a story of me having the opportunity to be part of Kwibuka in the 20th anniversary of Kwibuka. So I go, I'm shown my seat, I sit down, I'm watching. I've never been in this environment, in the stadium. And
so for those who don't know, Kwibuka is the commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
Yeah, so I'm sitting. And this lady comes, sits next to me. Hello. We don't say much to each other. There's a lot going on in the field, a lot of interesting stuff. And then this man stands up to speak, to testify. I think his name was Fidel, if I remember right. And he speaks about what happened to his family. He talks about how this is still very difficult for me to talk about, but he talks about how he was in Kigali when the genocide against the Tutsis began. And he wasn't too worried because he was coming in from Rohingya, but he wasn't too worried because, his family was surrounded by people he'd grown up with. And this is hopefully, I'm telling this story right, because I was listening to him in my minimum Kenya Rwanda. And then he makes his way back home and goes and gets there, finds that his family has been obliterated, completely annihilated, finished by the people who he thought would protect them. Then this lady next to me grabs my arm and she leans on it and she just starts crying quietly. And then people start crying in the stadium. You hear a cry from here, cry from there, cry from... And then before you know it,
it's 40,000 people just crying.
And there's a lot of crying that's happening. And then shortly thereafter, I did a documentary about a young lady who had changed her life. She had been an IT specialist, and she decided to tell stories because she felt that Rwanda's healing process involved storytelling and using traditional methods. I loved that girl. And she tells me of a story of how her family was killed and how she was rescued by neighbors and how she was alone as a child in the DRC. And I'm a girl dad, so I can only imagine what that's like. And then she came back and she was found by an aunt who raised her. But you see, as a journalist, so this is me, first of all, as a human being, I'm like, what the hell? What? But as a journalist, you're thinking to yourself, we don't really get this. We don't understand the magnitude of what actually happened here. We don't get it. People's lives were upended completely. You ask me about memorable interviews. An interview I did with the first civil servant to cross into Rwanda to see what's happened after the genocide. The first British civil servant, that is. And I talked to him, I asked him to draw a word picture for me about what he experienced. And he tells me that he crossed over into Rwanda from Uganda. And he got there in the evening. And it was eerily quiet. Quiet. very, very quiet. And dark. You don't see people moving around. And you open the windows and the smell that hits you. And then he hears dogs barking in the background. And then he drives in. And for him, that was his first impression of Rwanda. So,
dark, smelly, and quiet.
The word was a morgue with 1 million people dead. And so now, let me bring you ask me about these things, then this was how long ago?
This would be 31 years ago.
And then you see what Rwanda has become now. And I'm a student of President Kagame's. I quote speeches. Most recently, I've quoted him over the years. And most recently in Saudi Arabia, he's saying that the population must feel, if you say something, the population, it must be reflected in how the population feels and stuff like that. And then there was a time I was moved to tweet a picture of him and say that we shall one day ask how he did this. And it is primarily because of all these accumulated stories that you've heard. And you wonder just how in 30 years Rwanda has come from where it has come from to a point where this tiny little African country is probably the most visible country on the continent. So what is the most important story? I'm telling you these stories because of context, because you can relate. And a lot of them they're human stories that have to do with how decisions that have been made by human beings have affected other people.
And how do they affect you and your idea of yourself as a man?
You have to ask yourself very serious questions about yourself as a man. You unpack. First of all, I have one of my closest friends. Some of my closest friends are Rwandan. Probably, my innermost circle is made up of very many Rwandans. Like my innermost. And you're challenged. There's one particular friend who has taught me not to sweat the small stuff. Just because when you sit down and listen to her story, you're like, I don't know if I could have survived that. And then very quickly you realize that, why am I sweating these small things? And you begin to look at things broadly, but also you begin to see how your decisions will affect other people. And those who know me know about my feelings towards President Kagame and my admiration for him, but also just the fact that this country has emerged to speaking for itself. It is an incredible African story. It demonstrates to us what we can do as Africans. And then it also causes me to wonder what I can do in my own capacity.
One of the things that...
I hope I'm not boring you.
No. Listen.
I'm not a very good interviewee.
No. This is amazing. As someone who's involved in the media, I think the scariest thing for me is how technology is going to skew our perception of reality.
That's crazy though, isn't it?
It's super scary.
Have you tried using Grok?
Yes.
Have you seen the Grok Imagine?
And that's what I was going to ask you about. Right now, we're sitting here in Kampala. In a couple of months, there's going to be a presidential election.
Yeah.
And as is normal around these times, emotions are running super high.
Mm.
Now, you add politics, emotion, and then you add deepfakes into that mix, where I can create
Manipulate
Alan,
reality.
literally. I can get Alan to say all sorts of things that's a fully deepfake, and just put it on the internet, on social media, and it will go viral. I mean, we saw what in 2017 Cambridge Analytica, and what it was able to do with, not even with AI.
No, things
with
are pretty crazy now. I have
Right.
seen some things.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
If we cannot tell reality, if just as journalists, if we cannot look at at an image and report about it, if the populace can hear a voice and not know whether it is the real President Kagame voice or not, we're in a world of trouble. I feel super scared. Are you as scared as I am?
I'm scared. Am I allowed to say shitless?
Yeah.
I'm scared to death
Yeah.
about what AI can do, but I also see what opportunities it presents. And I think that is the thinking we ought to be having. I think it allows... The question that I'm most interested in is, how do I use AI to continue reflecting or to support the work that we're already doing?
But very often they're bad players.
Absolutely. But there are certain things, facts are stubborn things. That's another of President Kagame's phrases. You can't, when you go, your experience, when you go out there, your experience is different from what the manipulation suggests. It's difficult. I can see where the threat lies. I can see where the danger is. But I can also see where the opportunity lies. I think the opportunity lies in making sure that we get on top of these technologies.
But very often, Africans are usually the last to do that.
And that should change. But we've discovered, there's an African country that is sponsoring NBA and NFL teams. So we've discovered quite a lot about what our capacity is. And I think we need to be in a position where we say that what more can this technology do for us? Because it's available, it's ubiquitous. And if we need to get on top of those technologies. Someone was saying that the next billionaires or whatever it is are going to come from AI. And the question is, what is lacking? What is missing? There's a university here that makes sure that every student, Victoria University, has a policy that every student must be AI trained, whatever subject they're learning. Is this the solution? Potentially. Is this where we need to be? When we think about primary school education, how much are these kids exposed to technology? And do they know? Because it is from that knowledge that they'll be able to say that this is not sunny. This is a manipulation.
But during that time, which might be let's say 1 year to 10 years, as we're training people to actually understand and be media literate, we're in a world of trouble.
We are. And leading up to elections and all these things that you talk about, and there's always going to be that risk.
Or it will get to another point where now I'm looking at things in what's happening in Sudan. And whereas back in the day, if I saw an image of people being killed and it was video and I could hear their voices, I'm thinking, this is happening and something needs to be done. Today, I can't be 100% sure.
Because you don't know.
Right.
Because you don't know. And that is where the answer lies, Sunny. It lies in making sure that you know. It lies in making sure that you are able to interpret reality from, and whatever it takes. We must make sure that people know what the truth is.
I mean, but we've seen politicians will use and they're good at that,
Our politicians
right?
exhaust me, man.
Right. But they'll use these tools to get what they want, and they will lie. And I mean, come on, you were in the UK during Brexit, and they just turned reality
lies.
around.
Yeah, lots of lies were told.
And you're thinking that is a more mature country with a lot more university graduates and all.
You just have to see about Americans talking about genocides happening wherever they're said to be happening. Like there's that white people are being killed in throwing around.
So when you say that our challenge as Africans is that we need to be aware of the technology, and all AI and deepfakes and all that, it will take a while.
But that's for the whole world as well. There are people in the UK who have no clue what's going on. There are people in America who have no clue. It's not just an African problem. It's everybody's problem.
I guess I'm worried because when I look at our region, right? So whether it's in the DRC, you're seeing images of Tutsis being slaughtered and eaten. And now you're thinking...
They are being slaughtered and beaten in many cases.
And eaten. Not beaten, eaten.
Yeah, eaten, yeah.
So we're seeing... Some will say... Some forces will say, look at what's happened. This is genocide. Some will say, hey, this is media manipulation. And we're seeing that. And then we start going into the back and forth of what is reality. And it's for me, it's just super scary.
What you can't manipulate is people's lived realities. What people tell you in that environment is what you can't manipulate. Regardless of what goes on around the world, facts on the ground are extremely stubborn. You can't change that. And that's why if you're trying to cover Uganda from London, it's always going to be problematic. You will never know what the reality is. And that is why it's important that Africans realize the need for them to tell their stories from the ground up. There will be people in those environments who will say, no, that's not true. And those people need to be amplified and platformed. And that's what we're trying to do. Because again, interests exist. There are people who are interested in distorted narratives because those distortions work in their benefit.
100%.
There are people who are interested. And unfortunately for Africans, this is why we were, I guess we were colonized. Like, what the hell? Why are we still sleeping on these issues? We need to recognize the fact that there are people whose industry, who make money
from our pain,
from talking crap about African countries. I know, African leaders have to be held to account. There's no question about that. And as a journalist, it's my duty to make sure that there is a level of accountability. But hold on a second. What is also true is we must protect some of our African leaders from all this nonsense that goes around. Because if someone comes and says, your president is a moron, your president is an idiot, and there are cases where presidents are idiots and morons, I guess. It's interpretive. But then there are also cases where you're like, hold on a second, what do you mean by that? And what does that say about me as a person?
Who voted for that person?
Exactly. What are you saying? Where is my agachi? Where's my dignity? Are you saying something about? So it's in my interest to make sure that, hold the leaders to accountable, to make sure the leaders are accountable, but also when things are going right, they're going right.
Yeah. Talking about leaders, like I said earlier, Uganda is going into the polls in January. For Ugandans, they understand what's at stake. A lot of us who are outsiders looking in, we don't fully understand what the issues are. And I think this is a perfect platform for...
Because you think I understand what the issues are?
At least you probably understand a bit more than I do.
Uganda is complex. We have a critical mass of young people who are very demanding, rightly so. They want things to be done a certain way. They don't want to see potholes in their city. They want delivery of services. They want to feel that their government is present, that they can go to a police station and get the services they need. They can go to hospitals and get the services they need. They want to see less corruption, and corruption is endemic.
Do they actually want to see it?
That's a very clever question, actually. I'm not sure.
Because I'll give you an example. So yesterday I was in an Uber.
Oh.
It picked me up, I think, in the center of town, Nakasero, and I was heading back to where I'm staying in Muyenga.
Oh.
And the young man, I don't know Kampala Street, so I was just in the back, and he decides to
switch off.
No. He decides to turn into a one-way road. That was, what we'd call in Rwanda Sansenic. He was going against the traffic.
Did you mind?
I did not know. And then a police officer stopped him. Had seen him, stops him. Now, it was a bit embarrassing because I saw the police, the name tag, and it looked Rwandan. You see a name Nzeimana.
These names are everywhere.
Yes. So I'm like, okay, let's see what happens here. And he's like, I've seen what you've done. I'm going, he pulls out, there's a contraption they have. I'm going to charge you 100,000 shillings. And there's, a back and forth. And then eventually the guy says, okay, go. So I asked him, I was like, oh, the police officer, he forgave you. You had a conversation and he forgave you. He's like, no. I slipped him 5,000. So I asked myself this question. When they say that, and this is what, probably he was maybe 25, maximum 28. So he's a young Ugandan.
With the policeman?
Both of them. He's young, everyone's young. And these are the people who aspire for less corruption. A police that,
I think
responds. You can say you want things all the time. But there's a price to pay for a functioning society.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point, isn't it? A lot of these things have been allowed to go on for way too long without consequences. And I think it's the absence of consequences that encourages these things to happen. But also, I remember when I was a student in the UK, this guy was pulled over by a cop. Same story, only that he was drink driving. He was drunk, he should not be driving, and he had like 7 people in a car for 5 people. And so the policeman pulled him as this guy said,
were you in the car?
I can neither confirm nor deny this.
How did you fit in the car? I feel for me that's the problem.
So this guy pulls the cop aside and asks him, tells him, Kenyan guy pulls out 20 pounds, offers it to the policeman. Policeman asks him, what's up? They take this and leave us, we want to go. Guy asks him, what do you mean? He says, you're drink driving. He says, okay, hold on. What do you mean by drink driving? That I drive the car to the bar. How is it supposed to make it back home? Who's supposed to bring it back?
Fair
Number
questions.
1. Number 2, and where I come from, this is life-changing money. Take it and let us go. The cop could not believe.
Was he a white cop?
I wasn't there. I can neither confirm nor deny. Anyway, so long story short, they figured out, he was fine and all this stuff, and they had to find a way of leaving that car behind and going. But that was a society where, a policeman is well paid, is well taken care of. He doesn't have issues like a policeman in Kampala, who is constantly in debt, trying to figure things out. But then you can also see that there are deliberate efforts to change things, like, when General Muhoozi took over CDF, you're beginning to see movement improvements in the welfare of these soldiers. In the UPDF, you're beginning to see a fight against corruption, like a real fight against corruption within the security apparatus. Again, it goes down to who's leading the effort. Are they intentional about it? Do they really want to make sure that there's an end to corruption? So improve the welfare of these guys, improve their ability to access funds so that they can look after their kids. But if you just leave them there without, hey, chief, they say in Kampala Sibizibe, which basically means
Kampala
is
not buildings,
yes. Kampala is a way of life.
It's a hustle.
It's a hustle. Yeah.
Talking about a friend of yours, for a moment in time, it seemed as if your dear friend Muhoozi, General Muhoozi, was going to stand. There was a moment, though it was short-lived, but there was momentum in that direction. You know him much better than the vast majority of the world. You understand his thinking. You understand what he aspires when he looks at Uganda. I'm sure you have these conversations. What would he have been? Would he have made a transformational president, or better yet, in a world where he eventually becomes that, will he be a transformational president?
Probably more than anybody else in Uganda's history.
That's there's his dad.
And let's be clear. Those who know me know that my loyalty to the people that I'm loyal to is blind. And that is my brother right there. My elder brother, in who I have a lot of love and respect. I know him quite deeply. We've had hours and hours of conversations. I understand him quite a lot. And I understand where he's come from. I normally say that you just have to see what he's done with the responsibilities that have been given to him. When you talk to the generals in the army, they'll tell you that now we know decisions are made here now. At the end of the meeting, we know where we are going with this. We don't have to wait for someone else to make a call. No, a decision has been taken. Let's go. And that clarity of mission. Again, I speak as someone who's had the advantage of having a lot of conversations with him. And I think because Uganda is where it is now and it's ripe to take off, you need someone who can make the right moves.
What's his vision for Uganda?
It is a prosperous Uganda where everybody has a stake, where everybody can thrive. These are the conversations we've had. There was a time I remember, for him, he doesn't understand how you can do well and be in the UK. Why don't you come here? What are you doing there? Make that money, but spend it here. Because for him, I think there are very few people who go to bed and wake up thinking about Uganda, and he's one of them. He all our conversations will be, how are you? Are you fine? Is everything okay? Yeah. A long time, I'm like, man, busy. What are you working on? Then he'll go through what he's working on. And there is nothing else he's doing other than focusing on this country, on its stability, on its peace, and on ensuring that Ugandans at any time, day or night, can walk and they can interact freely. Because again, we must understand our history. We come from a history of turbulence. General Muhoozi's family was forced out of Uganda, just like my family was forced out of Uganda. We had to leave because this country was no longer safe for us. So, so his preoccupation in that sense is to give people a country that
Where they no longer have to flee from.
exactly where they can live and thrive and plan and raise their kids for generations. And that is what we're working. That's what he's working on. You know, I say we because
You're part of it too, and I think that that's correct. Like, I think the effort of nation building is not just one man's job.
no, absolutely not, absolutely not. And I don't care what anybody says about that guy.
Mm.
I'm fortunate enough to know him.
Mm. You know
I
his
have
heart.
seen him. I know his heart, and you can't tell me diddly squat about him. You know, because I know him. I know how many. I don't know how many kids he's looking after, whose parents, whose fathers are not in their lives. You know, I know how many people run to him because they have no other option. You know, so to that extent, I know what sort of man he is as a man, but I also know what he can do for the country.
Why does it seem as if, because the person that you paint is a great man, and as a Rwandan, we like to call him our favorite nephew. You know, but why, when his name comes up in Ugandan discourse, it's abuse. Why does he have such bad PR here for such a great person?
Because he's not interested in PR.
But I think it's important. I mean,
No,
if you want to lead a people,
have you ever seen an interview where MK has done an interview sitting down and talked? You go look and come back and tell. He's done a few many years ago. But have you ever seen him explain himself? Have you ever seen him talk about him? Well, he will tweet a few things here and there about Beyonce and about how many. But beyond that, you know, I think he's cut out of the same cloth as his father has, because one of my biggest frustrations with Uganda is that there's a lot of good stuff that happens here that nobody talks about. And part of that reason is because there's just a culture within the NRA, NRM, let our work speak for itself. We do not brag about who we are. We do not talk about us. We let our work speak for itself, which is incredibly frustrating.
Because on the other side,
I am in the media, but General Muhoozi will never pick up the phone and call me and tell me, "Oh, Alan, do you think I should? What did I?" No, none of that. None of that. Very often, I'm the one who will send him a message and say, that was a very good speech. Well said. You know, especially, you know, but then he'll be like, okay, thank you. It's not something
keep it moving.
Yeah, keep it moving. This is not about how we are perceived, about the color of our nail polish, or about the color of our mascara. This is about real work, impacting real lives.
But I would say, because now I'm what they'd call, am I the PK generation? Maybe not, but I'm around that.
Yeah,
I'm around that. 45.
Yeah, you're.
Yeah, like I said,
yeah.
I'm on the outer fringes of that generation, and I think what he's done, it's not necessarily PR, but it's getting everyone to understand the collective mission, and that's through communication and speaking about that shared mission, right? It was never really about him, but he makes us feel like, okay, we're a part of this.
But you see, those are the people who influence General Muhoozi. That is the group of people. These guys a bunch of 20-year-old kids who go into the bush.
But then they also speak, right? And understand the power of storytelling
they
in
do.
Nation building.
They do. And I think, but you see, but you see, General, you know, President Kagame will not necessarily speak for himself about these things.
Sure.
Other people will do the talking. Okay? Because again, you go back to the discussions we've had. Now, I remember one of our more recent interactions with General Muhoozi, we were discussing Mao Zedong. And in it, he reminded me that even after Mao took over, He's not the one who went to announce that he had taken over. Someone else went. That is the culture of these guys. We have a mission. We are very clear about that mission. Let's go out and do it. You know, that is, and I think I'm hoping that you'll one day agree to my ideas of a proper documentary, because you'll just, as soon as I start that conversation, we move on to the next thing. He's not interested at all.
It's a challenge that we've been having back home, trying to get this, for example, at least with Museveni, right? He gave us the sowing the mustard seed.
Yeah, but you know,
But,
even President
we've
Museveni,
but
you see him as well. He's a bit of a producer himself. He'll tell you, "Come and stand here, come and stand here." When
but
you're
then
taking a
in
picture.
terms of storytelling, so which is weird because in terms of storytelling, there's that seminal book
Yeah.
that we are able to refer to.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of been like, okay, whenever I have old RPF heads, I will ask, where's the book? When's the book coming?
But so if he doesn't have time and he's busy fixing Rwanda,
But that's
maybe you should write the book.
I
Now,
mean,
I for example, I have notes.
Mm.
I literally, you know, I had this idea at one point that Africa had two supreme leaders, President Museveni, President Kagame. So I have been writing these notes over a period of time that might one day turn into a manuscript for a book. And you have to ask yourself, you know, if there's a leader, and even in Museveni's books, Museveni wrote the Mustard Seed. The first version was not written by him. Someone else had to do that. The subsequent version, he looked at the first version and he looked at it and he said, okay, there are certain things that need to be rewritten, corrected. And so he decided to address those issues. Sometimes you need to allow the leader to do the big things. Take these things off his plate. Allow him to do the big things. General Muhoozi has written a book as well. But now if you asked him to write a book, maybe, you know, he will never do it. I think one day I called him a poet and people thought I was a madman for saying that. But his collection of poetry is incredible. It's just never been published. So my point is, I think when you are dealing with people whose thinking is very strategic, it's difficult for them to find time to worry about the minutiae, about details like how, you know, sitting down and dedicating 5 hours a day to writing a book.
You know, probably for the very first time in years, you're able to sit in Kampala and really digest the Kampala scene and Uganda. You know, when you're coming in and out, there's only so much time you have to walk around, talk to market people, and really get fully invested in the hurly-burly of the local scene. But now you're able to. What has surprised you the most about the Uganda you now fully live in?
The young people.
What's so surprising about them?
These kids are smart as hell. You know, the other day I was sitting at a restaurant and I'm always curious, always talking to young people. And these guys are sitting next to me. 3 guys. I asked them, how are you guys? What are you up to? What do you do with your lives? Said, we are business people. I'm like, what sort of business? Like, these guys are trading in USDTs. And they have this whole idea about how they built blockchain that trades on their behalf. And how much money do you make? Well, on a good day, we make $5,000-$6,000.
Jesus.
A day. And there is an entire thing going on there that even the government doesn't know about, I don't think.
If it did, it would tax them.
Exactly.
The government
Let's keep
the secret.
Exactly. They don't necessarily know what's going on there. And I think for me that is interesting. You know, you have all these issues and there are issues to be addressed. There are issues around justice to be addressed. We shouldn't have Ugandans disappearing. We should have all these problems that we see. But then you also have a critical mass of young people who are saying that as long as there is electricity and there is the internet, I'm sorted. And I find that very interesting. I find that very interesting because they're beginning to find their way. A lot of them are. They realize that this government, if we wait around for the government to intervene, we shall struggle. But We have electricity. Data can be cheaper. We have data though.
And there's food.
And there is food. We will make food. We will add the food. So I've always said that the informal economy is not just about borders and about
market women.
Market women anymore. It's now about these guys who are working on their own in little rooms somewhere.
Content creators.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just hope that Uganda allows them to thrive and to just be, without stifling them too much.
Too much.
Okay, without stifling them, you're right. Too much is the wrong phraseology. Just let them be. Like, for goodness sake, why is Facebook still closed?
I have no idea.
Like, why are we...
When you ask your friend...
Who?
Muhoozi.
We've never had that conversation.
You never asked him?
No, but it should not be... We've never... Maybe we should. But we've never really sat down to discuss a lot of
the minutiae of Uganda.
No. I think we've certainly, that particular conversation is an important one that we've never quite discussed, and but I know for a fact that he is obsessed with young people and how to make sure young people are engaged productively. He has studied it. He has commissioned studies. He knows what type of young people exist in Uganda. He was one day telling me that there are those who can work but can't find jobs. There are those who can't work because of the level of their education. And then there are also those who, so he has categorized them. I forget the other category. And he understands them and what their challenges are. So he obsesses over that. He obsesses over it.
Talking about young people, as we speak today, the most quote-unquote boring East African nation, Tanzania, is going through...
Is it boring?
Quote unquote.
Diamond Platinum's, Rayvanny.
When I talk boring, I mean they're going through something that someone would say is very un-Tanzanian. There are people on the streets, people are really mad, there's a lot of anger. There's that kind of instability that me in Kigali, I never thought I would see. I thought the CCM... No, me in Kigali. So me sitting in... I never thought that in Tanzania I'd see those scenes. I'd gotten used to them maybe here in Kampala, as well as Nairobi. Young people being... So I just wanted to ask you, if Tanzania can go that way, we've seen Uganda go that way previously. We've seen the issues in Kenya. Just how vulnerable are we as East Africans? And if we are indeed vulnerable, how can we perhaps conflict-proof our nations? Is there any way that we can actually?
When I've sat down to think about these issues that are going on, and I covered the Gen Z protests in Kenya from London. I've covered Uganda extensively. I know a lot about what goes on and how these protests emerge. I've covered a lot of Africa. I don't think this is not a recent problem. It's the reason why President Museveni and people like President Kagame and General Rijema went to the bush, and all these other Ugandans. And I think I bring it down to the responsiveness of the government, of the state, or lack thereof. How responsive is the government? How responsive is the state? Do they look like they care about the issues that are being raised? How do they respond to those issues? And I think for a very long time, these issues in Tanzania have been festering. There have been all sorts of undercurrents. And the question is, how did the government respond to those undercurrents? And what we're seeing now, what is going on with what we're seeing now? And I think ultimately, if the state doesn't respond to the demands of people, especially young people, then
You're in a world of trouble.
with the Chivas, they have a problem. Because when you think about it, it's 1789 French Revolution, same story. You know, the bourgeoisie are who they are, and the lumpen proletariat are like, what's going on here?
We need bread.
We need bread. You know, that discontent. How do you respond to it? Bouazizi in Tunisia, the Arab Spring that came after that, same story. How do you respond? One of the things that I've done, in Rwanda, I went to Mushikirano, and
there's a national dialogue.
And there were people calling in from all over the country with their problems, and those problems were being addressed immediately. Have you had that,
Minister?
What have you done about that? And there was a government official who leaned in and told me, Chief, this is the most difficult week for all of us. We are on tenterhooks the whole time.
Hoping no one calls in.
But also hoping that I don't have to explain anything.
Yeah.
Because when you are subjected to that, it's open to scrutiny. Your explanation is open to scrutiny. And it better measure up. So I think ultimately, the responsiveness of the state. When you have ministers in Kenya going on TV and saying, I'm wearing a Jacob & Co. watch.
Worth close to $500,000.
Exactly. I'm wearing a belt.
That can pay your entire lineage's school fees.
Yeah. So someone looks at you and says that my entire family tree can be wealthy from just the clothes you're wearing. And you're a minister or you're a government official. What does that do? It further widens the gap that exists, and it causes problems.
One of the, African politics is so interesting. When the Tanzanian president, Mama Suluhu, came into power in 2021, after the passing away of Pombe Magufuli, there was a belief that feminine energy, Sheikh Zud, would change the way we do politics. And I guess there's a bit of a shock or / disappointment that she's acting like an African big man, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of hear about your thoughts on that intersection between femininity and power, and how
in a heavily patriarchal society.
There you go.
We must remember that.
Yeah.
Patriarchy in Africa, my friend, it's difficult to push back against. And this is not me trying to justify her actions. I think if you're president, you're president. You have power to do whatever you're supposed to do. And, I have not paid as much attention to Tanzania as I should in order to understand the detail. But it's not very easy to be a woman president in an African country, I imagine, because that comes with all sorts of, they'll call you, my friend Larry Madowo, I think he was somewhere and people wanted him to run for president. I said, absolutely not.
Over my dead body.
Over my dead body. He said, after 100 days, people will be saying that Larry must go. But Larry must go. Because that is just the nature of politics. And the nature, people have interests. They pursue those interests. Unless you align, then there is a problem. In my view, in my many scribblings, I remember writing a whole chapter, maybe a chapter, in which I was saying that I think the advantage President Kagame had is that he bypassed interests and went straight to the people. And so he derives legitimacy straight from the people. Again, things like Omushichiran, where someone comes and they have a voice and they are heard, and things are done, and there's a response to what you're saying. That can only give you more legitimacy as a leader. But I guess the issue here is you come in after John Pombe Magufuli.
Who was a strong man.
A strong man
of
who
action.
took no prisoners. Your character is different. It does, and I hate to say this, but you're also a woman in a heavily stratified patriarchal society. The pushback is bound to happen. How does this woman tell me what to do? They see a woman first before they see the president. But I think we need to start normalizing the fact that
power is just power.
Yeah, and very often Africa's problems are caused by decisions made by men. Give the women a chance to lead. I am one of those guys who believes, rightly or wrongly, that women tend to be a bit more sensible and less egotistical than
you'd think.
I don't know.
You'd think. I mean, the most prominent. I mean, on one side you have Angela Merkel, who was probably one of the greatest German chancellors. On the other side, you have Maggie Thatcher, who some blame for the destruction of the British middle class. And so sometimes I wonder
But
whether
then again, if those positions were occupied by men, those arguments would still be the same.
Exactly.
They would, because again, they were driven by their ideological leanings. Some say President Trump is nuts and Kamala Harris would have been a better president. They say the same about Hillary Clinton. Is President Trump a better president? That's interpretive.
This year has been a year of major change for you. You tweeted that this year was super tough.
I kicked my butt.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yeah.
I lost my brother Cedric.
That's what I was going to ask you. When you lose someone that close to you, it must change you fundamentally about how you see yourself and how you even move into the future.
That was not what the script read. Oh man, it's going to be a while before I recover from losing Cedric. That was my brother. We fought. There's nothing two brothers have ever done that we didn't do.
And how do you move? Because I'm sure there are people who might be listening to this and they've also lost someone close to them. And they're also trying to find a sense of how do we continue living and thriving. We started this conversation talking about Kwibuka. And how from the depths of hell, you now have a country that's potentially bidding for F1.
That's just crazy. It's an insane story.
So I go back to you. How do you make sense of tragedy? And how do you move on?
I lost my mother as a student in the UK, and I was so broke. I couldn't even afford to come and bury her. So I stayed there and I attended the entire funeral over the phone. And I was alone, literally a student in a foreign country, struggling. And I think that shaped a lot of my feeling towards people. When you've lost your mother and she was a single parent, in those circumstances.
Now you're alone. You're alone in the world.
Yeah. It shapes you. When Cedric fell ill, I was fortunate enough to be back in Uganda. You say one of the biggest things that has happened for me is that I'm now here and I'm able to go and spend time with him in hospital. I'm able to give his sister a hug. I'm able to sit next to his mother and pray together and listen to what she's thinking. And this is an honor, a privilege. I'm able to do these things because that is my brother lying there. If I was still living in the UK, what would I be doing? Sending text messages, video calls. Now I'm able to sit in the hospital room with him and have conversations and bond. And that for me is very important because my nature demands it. I'm not a fair weather friend. For me, I will bury bodies with you. We shall go to the depth of hell together. And that is exactly how this experience was. I'm not, we will literally, I don't play about friendship. And so when this happened for me, it jerked me quite a lot because a lot of my coming back home
was to be with your brothers.
Yes. It was also structured around Cedric. It was conversations I'd had with this brother. It was, no, Alan, no, leave that guy alone. No, that one, no. This one, yeah. And, and you feel it. And then there are people who truly, truly loved Cedric, his closest friend, or he was General Muhoozi's closest friend. And so when you are amongst your brothers and you're grieving together this incredible, life-changing, loss where he brought so many people together from all sorts of places. It was the glue that held us together as friends. It's a difficult loss. It is horrible. Horrible. And I think the question is, how do I move on? Shortly thereafter, recently, I lost a friend called Charles Kataratami, who I had met when I was in S1. And Charles and I knew each other quite a lot. And when that happens, when that sort of loss happens, I think the most important lesson for me is to extend yourself grace. Just allow
kind to yourself.
To be kind. Allow yourself. I stopped everything. Cedric was buried on my birthday. I stopped everything. I just stopped. My world stopped. I decided, okay. I went to Nairobi, moved in with my friend Alistair, and I just did nothing to just allow myself to breathe. Because leading up to his funeral, he needed to be strong to see him to the very end, to make sure that he's sent off with dignity. And I remember him asking me one day when we were in hospital, "What are you still doing here?" And I told him, "I've come to take you home, brother. That we are going home, whichever way." And that needed to be done. And that also required that you suspend everything else until after you've accomplished that mission. And so we accomplished the mission. We sent him off. He got a super burial. He convened. There were 2 vice presidents attending. The vice president, the vice chairman of the National Party was there. The deputy speaker, the president sent representatives. The CDF was present. My brother went out in glory. And when that was suspended, you finally come to terms with what your feelings are. And then you begin to sort of confront them. And at that point, you realize, let's let it all out. Give yourself time to breathe.
And to cry.
Heck yeah. Norman Schwarzkopf, being the commander of Desert Storm, the US invasion of Iraq, or was it after Kuwait had been invaded, he was pictured, photographed with tears in his eyes, a 4-star general. And he was asked by Larry King, former CNN interviewer, that, "You're a general, why were you crying?" And he said, "I'm scared of men who don't cry." So we are giving ourselves time. It's going to be a while before we fully recover from what happened to Cedric.
This is my last question to you because I know you have a very important lunch appointment, actually, with, as you told me, Cedric's mom. What does the future look like for Alan? Do we have a podcast coming? Elected politics.
I was going to run for mayor of Kampala.
Why didn't you? Someone has to,
Let's just say that someone told me, don't do it. one of very few people who can
Yes.
tell me to do what to do and what not.
Mm.
But I don't have to hold political office in order to impact things. And
So no elected office for Alan.
no, but we shall still make sure that this country is great.
Mm.
We shall continue to make our contribution in the most subtle way. But also beyond that, I think, I needed to take a break.
Mm.
It has been almost 30 years of just
Constant work.
constantly. So you breathe and then you realize, okay, now this is where we are going. I'm mentoring a number of kids from Rwanda who are doing storytelling. I want to do more of that. Probably move to Kigali for a few months at some point.
Karibu.
Do I have a bedroom in your house?
100%.
So, do that, spend some time there, spend some time in Uganda mentoring young people as well. But also just continue the conversations, the important conversations about Africa. I'm doing a lot of that. I'm doing some work with Afrexim Bank where we are chronicling African leaders, having engaging conversations with them. I'm also planning my own thing, planning to be better than Joe Rogan, to be better than all these podcasters that people talk about. We want to do a proper project. But beyond that, also just train other young people to do the same thing. My real legacy will be how many people I helped do their work better, do their storytelling better.
No, it sounds super exciting. And listen, I can't wait to see what's next. Perhaps selfishly, I might say, just let the long form grow a little bit more before you
No,
come
you're doing
in.
a great job. You're doing
Do
a
not
great job.
come and.
That's the only reason I agreed to come on. You're doing a fantastic job.
No, it's an absolute.
I hope this
honor.
hasn't been too boring.
No, it's listen. I think my audience is, because I've been consistent.
Yeah.
I've been consistent in terms of the kind of conversations.
Yeah.
I know what I'm interested in.
Mm.
I want to understand the human experience.
Yeah.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
And we've grown hugely since I started. We kind of started this whole conversation kind of explaining how I started. And it's important. And I think Ugandans will, they always love to hear from you. And
I don't do these interviews a lot. I think
and that's why.
Yeah.
But why not? You're great.
Yeah. No, because I'm not very good at doing interviews. I'm just a rubbish interviewee. I'm better at asking questions. I'm not.
I hope I was up to scratch.
No, you did. You're amazing at what you do. but thank you for having me.
No, it's absolute honor. Any final words to the people back, I guess, in Kigali?
That first of all, you have an amazing country, a beautiful country, and I don't think Rwandans need to be told any more than they are doing an amazing job of protecting their country from all sorts of nonsense coming from elsewhere, and I think they need to do more. I think we all look at Rwanda in admiration,
and I think it's important that they hear from you that there are forces that we're up against, that we need to push back against.
Very often, for me, it's down to the character of the leader. And I often wonder what Rwanda would be like if it wasn't President Kagame, someone who, and in a conversation once, I think it was during the interview that I did with him, because President Kagame gave me the first head of state interview that I ever did.
I've been trying to get one of those.
No, he and it was a game changer for me, because until that point, who have you interviewed? And no.
Yeah.
Then finally you say, I've interviewed a president.
That was when you were
at Capital FM.
Capital FM.
And that for me was a game changer in the sense that you suddenly, it gives you a bit more gravitas. I think the where was I going with this?
Well, there was something that he told you.
Yeah, you sit back and you ask the man that, hold on, you take quite a lot of stick. You take a lot of, And I'm hoping that one day I'll do another interview where I literally just unpack him completely. Because there are lots of lessons to be learned from that entire experience of leading this country, going into all these things. His entire life is an important story. But you see, when you reflect on the life he's led, it tells you, listen, I'm a soldier. I think he told me that during the interview. I'm a soldier, and when you're a soldier, it's different. You sit down with Sunny, you have a meal now, Sunny goes out to fight, it doesn't come back.
Yeah.
So for us, we deal with real bullets, real life issues. These words are just words. So that's how he was able to be resilient. And you know, when I watch the Congolese conflict, I see I'm like, these guys don't know. Anyway, but ultimately, I guess the point I'm making without...
And these guys don't know. What don't they know?
Chief, leave me alone. These guys don't know.
Yeah.
You know, but ultimately, you know, what you have is, you know, you have the Rwandan story must be told relentlessly, because things have been normalized. Like, oh no, we are now sponsoring what? PSG? You're sponsoring ASWA? You're now in the NFL? You're now hosting the cycling thing? You take this stuff for granted until you hear stories that I have heard, until you hang out with people that I've hung out with. People who are still alive today will tell you what Rwanda was like. When we were driving into Kigali for the first time, me, Isaac Ruchibikango, and a friend of mine, Kawesa, now we get lost when we drive in.
Sometimes we do.
Back then, you could tell that this city starts here and it ends there. You know, now. So, Rwanda is a great country. It's a great country. Maybe.
So is Uganda. And
Oh yeah. Uganda is home. Uganda is the heart. But if I could, I'd move to Rwanda as well. So you should help me.
Well, let's trade.
Talk.
Let's trade. Yeah. I'll give you a room, and you give me one as well.
Absolutely.
Alan with one L. Thank you so much for having me. Or should I say, no, I did it all wrong. Thank you so much for being a part of this and having me in this amazing.
Can I keep the mug?
Yes.
Or do you just have to?
I literally. No. Yeah. It's been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.